What does Groupon's IPO mean for other tech companies waiting to go public like Zynga? Let's bring in a couple of guests for some perspective on that. Joining us from San Francisco are Jeff Clavier, who invested in Mobily, which Groupon bought last year, and blogger Rocky Agrawal, who's been following Groupon closely for the past 5 months. Jeff, I got to start with you. By our unofficial estimates, you about 30 times your money today. I mean, are we in the right ballpark? You must be pretty happy today.
Well, that's on paper, Emily. So like anyone, we're locked up for 6 months. So we'll see whether in 6 months we are still sort of right there.
So, Rocky, what's your take on the way the stock shot up today? You've been very critical of Groupon ever since they filed their first S1. How do you think they did?
Well, the pop today was fully expected. If they hadn't popped, that would have been a concern for the company. The fact that they popped to the extent that they did is not necessarily a positive sign for the company. You know, you mentioned Webvan earlier when you were talking to Corey. One of my collaborators on Groupon and digging into the accounting was a former investor relations executive for Webvan. And when I first started, he said, Rocky, you're being too negative about Groupon. Now he's saying I'm not being negative enough. So I think there's still a long way for this company to go.
Jeff, as a Groupon investor, what do you think about these comparisons to Webvan, which, you know, spectacularly imploded after a lot of excitement?
Yeah, I think it's grossly exaggerated if you look at the two models. I think in 3 years, Groupon has built a brand new business out of nowhere, getting to close to $1.7 billion in revenue in the third year. And yes, it's not perfect. Yes, they made a lot of mistakes and small and big along the way. But you can't negate that this is sort of a brand new model that still has a ton of legs. And I would actually disagree with the notion of mounting competition, because if you look at the other players in the daily deals market, besides Living Social, they all sort of disappearing one after the other. So if nothing, we see a consolidation of that market, and Groupon now having a public currency is certainly in a better position.
I think we're seeing a consolidation of some of the smaller players, but the bigger players are still out there. Google just launched their big shot across the bow yesterday with a national deal that was pretty well received. By my estimates, they sold about 75,000 to 100,000 of those deals, and that was clearly a direct aim at Groupon that, hey, this is the online advertising market. We're in here to stay, and you're going to be competing with us.
Jeff, can Groupon keep up with the competition? I mean, if you think about the competitors out there, these are not small companies. These are companies like Amazon and Google, which has hundreds of millions of dollars to spend on marketing.
They certainly have, but I would also point to the fact that even mighty Facebook, that has 850 or 900,000 million users, has sort of stepped out of the daily deal market because it's just harder than most people think. So yes, of course, we have Google, we have Amazon. It doesn't mean that Groupon's going to disappear tomorrow. And I think it sounds like the market and the media, to be honest, wants to take Groupon for a piñata. So let's just see how they perform. Now they are a public company. They have to report quarterly on their progress, and we'll see how they do.
I think people are reading the Facebook decision.
Hang on, Rocky, hang on. On that note, Jeff, you know Andrew Mason. What's he like? We know he's a funny guy, but does he have what it takes to be a public company CEO?
Actually, we'll see. I can't really sort of answer that question. From what I heard internally, Andrew is actually a smart guy, and he just has he's a character. I wouldn't sort of write him off as someone not being able to run a public company, but he has to prove to the market, and he has to sort of win this sort of credibility that public CEOs have. And you made the comment around Jeff Winter being on your show the day of the IPO. Jeff is an extremely credible sort of CEO. Andrew has to become someone like that, and we'll see whether he can manage it or not.
Rocky, what does Groupon have to prove?
I think Groupon has to prove that they picked the right market. One of the big concerns that I have is that people keep talking about the daily deals market. I think, Groupon has been really successful at that, but that's not a market. The broader market is the online advertising market, and that includes Google, that includes Facebook. I think a lot of people misinterpreted what Facebook did as a retreat from online advertising in the local space. When I talked to people at Facebook, they said, we just think daily deals is a bad business model. It's bad for small businesses, and we don't want to burn merchants. So we're going to wait until we figured out the right model, and then we're going to launch something.
All right, Rocky Agrawal and Jeff Clavier, thanks for joining us there from San Francisco.